Good evening all to the 64th session of the weekly huddle. My name is Anup Agrawal and joining me today is my friend and co-host Praneeth. We are cardiologists working at Care Hospital. The huddle is an unscripted audience level interaction addressing common clinical scenarios that we encounter in our daily clinical practice. We try to talk patient care entities which are very basic, which are relevant to our daily practice. At times we pick up simple topics and at times we pick up a little bit more focused discussion. The topic for today that we have chosen is as simple as it can get in terms of any combined discussion. And I will come to that in a second. The basic premise of the huddle is to bring our casual discussion to a more organized platform where we can share our ideas. And I hope after today's discussion, I will be able to compile these ideas and maybe put it in a booklet form that can be distributed to patients for their knowledge. As you all know, the huddle is not a speaker and audience model rather than a casual interaction, which means any of the attendees can raise their hand or unmute themselves to keep their input. As a courtesy, you should wait for others to finish their thoughts before you unmute yourself. You can also raise your hand and I will call for your name if that is what you please. Having said that, let me start with today's case. Excuse me for my throat today. I will ask my colleague Praneeth to give his opinion first, and then we will go down the list of our attendees for their opinion on today's discussion as well. So this is a routine case, a 52-year-old female. She had been known hypertensive for almost 6-7 years now. She came to me for the first time, pretty much just as a routine checkup, nothing really fancy. She takes a combo tablet, which includes an ARB and a diuretic, that is telmisartan and hydrochlorothiazide. She complains of paroxysmal headache, which had been going on for quite some time. It has been seen by a neurologist. He had underwent a few investigations, including scanning, and it was all termed as essential headache. She doesn't take any medications for that. She also has got baseline dyspnea on exertion, which does not interfere with her daily activity. She attributes it to her aging. In today's visit, she did not complain of any medical problem. She's a housewife, but she also does home tuition to nursery kids, which lately she had not been doing because of COVID. She's able to do her routine activities without any problems. Her dietary regulation is reasonable. She's not very focused on salt restriction, but she says she tries to do her best. She was last seen by a doctor more than a year ago, for which I don't have any details. She reports compliance with the medicine that is prescribed to her. In her OPD visit, her blood pressure was significantly elevated of the range of 180/110. I'm simplifying the numbers, that's kind of the average of what we took. Her heart rate was 84. We asked her to relax for some time, for about 15-20 minutes, and then we rechecked her blood pressure, and that was more or less the same as well. The rest of the physical examination was unremarkable. Her routine laboratory assessment was also normal. So the idea for this patient with uncontrolled hypertension was to adjust her antihypertensive medication, which was done. And I suggested some lifestyle modifications, which can also help to reduce her blood pressure. The point I want to discuss today is, should this patient be advised for self-monitoring blood pressure at home using a digital sphygmomanometer? Should SMBP be standard for every patient with hypertension? Why only this patient? Should it be a mandatory thing for every patient with a diagnosis of hypertension? Are there any pros? Are there any cons towards prescribing versus not prescribing? How aggressive should we go to tell patients that you should get your blood pressure monitored by yourself at home? And then, if we do think that SMBP is a good idea, what are the tips and tricks that we tell our patients so that the monitoring that they do at home is reported accurate and predictable. Do you guys have any preference towards any machine, any make, any model, any particular brand, any particular design? And why do you think so? Why do you think that's an important machine for people to buy? And then lastly, if we have time, we should also discuss the whole gamut of self-monitoring health gadgets. These days, almost every single person has got a pulse oximeter at home. Some of them also has rhythm analysis monitoring in the form of Apple Watch, or in the form of Samsung Watch, or Kardia, or LiveCore, or there are multiple. Is it in prime time now? Are we in a situation where we have very good health gadgets with us which can help patients improve their overall health status? Or is it still in infancy? Does the health gadget need to improve more? Or does our baseline education itself need to improve more? That will be our last question for discussion. Once we go through the self-monitoring blood pressure discussion, if we have time, we will also touch upon some of the health gadgets which may be relevant into today's discussion. So Praneeth, you got the discussion point. I'll have you get started with what you think, and then we will ask our attendees for their opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, Anup and everyone. So this patient who has an uncontrolled blood pressure, before you make a decision on modifying the treatment, which most likely she will need, I would like to first confirm whether this is true hypertension or is it like a white coat hypertension. You already did check the blood pressure twice after giving some time, but still it is high. But the possibility still needs to be considered, and I would like to revisit. So for in this patient, I would be tempted to suggest her to take a home monitoring of blood pressure and doubly confirm, be definitely sure that her hypertension is elevated. And now, if the patient already has a blood pressure machine, that is good, or I would definitely encourage this patient to take a BP measurement and do a record of these things. And the logbook that we prepared, I would like to give one of the logbook of BP to the patient and keep a record of the BP for a month or so, or at least a week, and come back with that logbook and see the trend of the blood pressure readings, and then make a decision on the change of therapy. And now, having given the logbook, the things which I would educate the patient is to how to check the blood pressure and how to make a recordings. So one, I would again try to show them the picture which I have it stored in my system about the position of the patient while recording the blood pressure, feet being on the ground, back supported, hand resting comfortably on a table or preferably lying down, and no tea, coffee, no talking between, no, the measurements, all those things. So show that picture and try to educate them how the blood pressure readings are supposed to be taken. I also tell them to take 3 readings. First reading to be discarded or forgotten, and take second and third readings with a gap of at least a minute between each and every reading. And if patients are reasonably educated enough, I would try to ask them to make an average of the second and third reading, or else simply wrote down the second and third reading which you have measured and put it down, and I will try to do the math for them. These readings or measurements to be taken as frequently as possible. Again, if the patient is compliant, I would ask them to make at least one measurement a day for this patient, whom at least because I have noticed a high blood pressure reading, I would encourage her to take at least one reading a day in several occasions, something like in the morning, something in the afternoon, night time, etc. Again, paying attention to all the do's and don'ts on how to accurately measure a BP recording, and then note it down and ask them to come back to review with the record, and based on the readings make a decision on modifying the treatment once I definitely confirm that it is a true hypertension that the patient is having. This is the question regarding the blood pressure thing that I do. The other questions that you asked, Anup, were can you tell me again?
Yes, Praneeth. So the other questions were, should we be advising self-monitoring blood pressure to every patient, or should we select a few patients? Are there any negative aspects to it? And is there any particular machine, model, make, anything that you prefer?
Right. So regarding advising for everyone, may not be everyone. Most of the patients are quite regular to their visits, and most of them are pretty much well controlled, and they are compliant, and they do not have these fluctuations. For them, I do not strongly recommend. For those whom there is this issue of discrepancy in readings, and where I suspect some drug incompliance, or when patients do not believe that they have hypertension, and when there are these instances where there is a sudden change of readings or whatnot, then in them I would definitely suggest. So not for everyone, but probably most of them would recommend. Then pros and cons of these things. Uh, Again, some they get a bit obsessive. They keep recording the blood pressure every now and then, and sometimes those every gadget has its own issues. So sometimes you have very strange abnormal readings, and they tend to react and they get panicky. So that I think is the cons. Pros definitely will make you better understand their hypertension, and helps you titrate the drugs and know their hypertension status better. So I would see more advantages, but cons are very tiny if I have to say. Regarding the make of BP machine, which I prefer, uh, Omron is company which is quite popular in these digital BP apparatus, and there are many models of Omron, and I believe that is a bit standard in terms of this digital BP apparatus. So I would suggest them to take one of those Omron devices. I really don't know many of the other brands. The one that I use in my OPD practice is one by Sarka, which again has some C's recommendations. So I use that in my OPD. And other than that, these are the only two companies that I know of. I think there is one website which tries to tell you about these machines which are available, which you can look into it. I don't recollect at this point of time, but I would, someone who is keen on knowing these standards and whatnot, I would suggest them that website and go through it, and try to get that BP machine from that website and get them if it is available. So these are the questions, Anu. These are the answers from your questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Praneeth. That's a good starting point. And I'll just revert to you with few things that you mentioned. When I was in my residency, I started with this thought of white coat hypertension. And somewhere in the middle of the residency, I was told, which now I believe, that there is nothing called white coat hypertension. The idea here is, if the stress of coming to the hospital itself gets the patient's blood pressure so high, then it is pretty much assumed that that level of stress the patient gets at their home or at their workplace probably 10, 20 times a day, which means that 10, 20 times a day, their blood pressure is actually going that high. And in that case, we can't just take hospital as a stressor in isolation. These patients, either they need to do stress management, or they need to take care of their blood pressure. And many of the times when we do ambulatory BP recording on this, we end up finding that these patients, they do have high blood pressure at home. It is just that they have never been checked. The second point that you mentioned about the online website. So Praveen just put it in the chat box. The website is called stridebp.org. This is a website that is managed by UK. I don't think it's a government website. I think it's an NGO setup where they have got patient education brochures, pamphlets, and they have got a list of certified machines along with the brand name and their model numbers. A lot of them are not available in India, but a few of those model numbers are available in India. And that's a good repository for people to go and look into if they want to actively prescribe a digital machine to their patients, or for that matter, if they want to use it for their own clinic. So having said that, I'm going to continue my discussion, and I'll have Dr. Shankar give his thought. He's a general physician, and I think that our today's discussion is most pertinent to him. Sir, few questions that I want you to answer along with today's discussion point, and you can skip whatever Praneeth has already mentioned in terms of the tips and tricks that Praneeth has mentioned already, that you can skip and you can add your own little tips and tricks. But my question to you are, number one, is my belief that white coat hypertension doesn't exist? Is my belief correct? That is one. What is your thought on it? And second, should doctors in their OPD use a digital machine for blood pressure check, or should we be using the old school mercury manometer? What do you think our idea should be? But before that, please address the discussion points for today, and then maybe you can answer these two questions later on. Shankar sir.
Okay, good evening to all. Whenever we come across a patient with elevated blood pressure, if he is referred or if he is found in our office, then I go with the only electronic BP apparatus only, automated, because by 2025, our central government has agreed with all the nations in the world that we should abandon usage of mercury, so in any form. So that's why we are supposed to use only automated BP apparatuses only. At the same time, I use MicroLife Watch BP. This is apparatus is cost about 5,000 in the market. So this automatically records 3 readings with 1 minute apart and gives average of the reading. So this is an automated one. This is known as AOBP. And another non-AOBP apparatus also we regularly use, that is given to our staff. So where only single reading will come. So he or she will record for 3 times with 1 to 2 minutes apart. And the first reading will be discarded and the second and third will be averaged, and that reading will be sent to me. This is, see, once this AOBP or non-AOBP machine records, if it is more than 135 by 85 or 140 by 90 respectively, then I suggest patient should undergo preferably ABPM, which is a gold standard, but it's not affordable and it is not available freely, and it's a costly affair. So in certain complicated situations, complex situations where we come across masked hypertension or night dippers, whether they are extreme dippers or non-dippers, in that situation where the patient is prone for cardiovascular events or stroke, susceptibility is there, then we subject them for ABPM. At least every hypertensive patient should undergo ABPM at least once in the beginning. This is my thought. And then I do, I've got 3 machines with me. They are, they don't reveal the data to the patient. So I tell him how to record that fleet flat and the support back supported and arm the level of the heart, and so all the what Dr. Praneeth enumerated or alluded to. We follow, and 5 minutes rest should be there before recording, and preferably be in the isolated room, and he or she should not consume coffee. They should not smoke for at least 30 minutes before the recording, or 2 hours at least a heavy meal. Then seated position, back supported, arm supported on the at the level of the mid-sternal level, at the heart level, and the feet flat on the floor. Then you should not watch the TV. You should not talk to anybody. You should be calm and quiet. Then he should record twice. So every record will be average of 3. So 2 readings he should take in the morning, preferably at the same time every day. 2 readings in the morning, 2 readings in the night, evening, preferably 6 to 10. So altogether, there will be 28 readings in his logbook. First day, we discard the readings. So we'll get this 24 readings. So average of these 24 readings will note down. So patient will come, bring back the machine to me. Then with the computer support, there will be software there, and with the computer support, I'll get a reading, average, and every day what was the reading. Because this was not displayed to the patient, because he will be very much undergo apprehension or fear or anxiety. That's why the data will not be revealed to him during when machine is with him. Then after going through the computer report, and will come out, and if that average BP, if it is more than 135 by 85, it is almost, it is equivalent to the readings of ABPM. If it is more than 135 by 85, I consider him as hypertensive, and either for non-pharmacological or pharmacological treatment will start. This is my approach, because I have been a part of India Heart Study, which is a large study done entire India. So I'm fortunate enough to be a participant in this group. So this is what we did during that study. This has been published in many of the journals, also international journals, the data and all. So this is my, so if it is less than 135 by 85, the elevated reading first he had was only, it is a white coat effect. I still believe that white coat effect and masked hypertension and dippers and all these things, we should remember the terminology. White coat effect, that is because of anxiety, because apprehension to the surroundings, fear of surroundings. So all these things, they definitely they elevate the BP, office BP. That's why we encourage home blood pressure monitoring. And one more advantage, actually patient should, looking at the BP apparatus, he feels happy, and preferably it should be on the dining table or on his writing table. Whenever time permits, he will go through. And if the readings are high, definitely will adhere to the drug regimen or lifestyle measures he will strictly follow. So this is an advantageous, actually, keeping BP apparatus with us. I encourage everybody, every hypertensive patient should buy home blood pressure monitoring apparatus, preferably MicroLife Watch BP or Omron. There is one model, HEM 5001 model is there that can be ideal, where you need not record every 3 times, you need not record, that itself records 3 times and gives average. So this is what I want to tell, and then I will add as attendees, they give their opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And what Praneeth said about the Karka machine and what Shankar sir mentioned about the MicroLife, they both are the same. Just so that in case if anybody is wondering, MicroLife is the original manufacturer, if I get it correct, and Karka is their Indian. I believe they are the one who are either rebranding it or importing it or whatnot. Every MicroLife machine has got Eris Life Sciences labeled onto it. Eris Life Sciences is the same pharmaceutical company that comes to you with their medications and whatnot. So I believe they are the exclusive importers of MicroLife. And Omron and MicroLife are the 2 machines which the Stride BP has got listed, which is available in India. I have shared that link on the chat box for anybody to go through. Let me ask my attendees for their opinion. Dr. Praveen Nagula is with us. Praveen, could you please unmute yourself and share your thoughts about today's discussion?
Good evening, sir. Regarding the present today's case discussion, everything has been mentioned, but my considerations regarding this patient would be she should be having self-monitoring of blood pressure at her home, and whatever the measures that has been already enumerated, that is fine. Now, if a patient of hypertension is there, the self-monitoring of blood pressure can be advised, provided the readings of the patient at each visit with you is what you call the blood pressure being more than 150 and diastolic being 100. Why this consideration is being done is those patients who are having a slightly elevated blood pressure, if they on regularly monitor and do, they will be having an apprehension that what you call the psychological, they will be going into psychological stress and all that. Compared to that of patients who are having persistent high readings and who are not compliant and all that, compared to those patients, these patients will be in those aspects. So for me, regarding this patient, she needs a strict self-monitoring of blood pressure, provided at least 2 readings in a day. And as the recommendation said, that she should be taking rest, having back rest and all that. And for me, sir, white coat hypertension does exist, provided the what you call the fluctuation of blood pressure at each visit is just between what you call 140 to 150 and all that, the borderline one. Not a patient who is having a blood pressure of 180, 100 and subsequently is having a normal. Not those patients. That patient we can consider as level, but for the borderline elevation of pressure, still we can consider that patient to be having a white coat effect because of so and so factors that patient might be first initially visiting the hospital and all that. And regarding the other thing, of course, sir, because the as recommended, electronic BP monitor should be given. There are wide varieties and available. They can check in the stridebp.org. The other thing, sir, how whether it will be beneficial to the patient or not, the hello.
Yeah, Praveen, we lost you just for 5 seconds. Please continue.
Yes, sir. whether they will be beneficial or not, the particular subset of patients which will be more beneficial regarding the self-monitoring of blood pressure, it would be those patients who are CKD, who are having elevated blood pressure, and those having a what you call rapid fluctuations in blood pressure. That would help the treating physician to titrate the drugs accordingly. I would emphasize the what you call large data that has been published on self-monitoring of blood pressure by the Oxford University. That is called as telemonitoring and self-management in the control of hypertension study. They have seen that just self-monitoring of blood pressure is not beneficial, but intensive co-intervention should be done. Just like that, after getting the readings, as Dr. Shankar sir has said, that we have to interpret the data and we have to intervene regarding the patient to up-titrate or not. And the meta-analysis has showed that simple self-monitoring of blood pressure is not beneficial, but intervention by the pharmacist or the nurse as well as the physician should be considered for effective control of blood pressure, sir.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Praveen. I think one point which I can take from your suggestion is a few points. Elevated blood pressure can be considered a white coat, but certainly a blood pressure reading of 180, 190 that you get in the OPD should not be contributed all to white coat hypertension. Let me ask Dr. Gauri for her opinion. I cannot see, yeah, her hand is up anyway, and she was on my next call list. Dr. Gauri, if you could please, we have had you before in this session, but just for our just for other attendees, if you could just briefly introduce yourself, what do you do, and then share your thoughts about today's discussion. Dr. Gauri, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Anup. I'm a practicing physician in Bangalore. I practice family medicine, and I also have a DNB degree in psychiatry as well. So, you know, with regard, so I do primarily general practice along with practicing psychiatry. And, you know, with this particular case, there are a few things, of course, all doctors have, I mean, put out fantastic points, and I do not want to repeat them. Two things that I do in my clinic. One thing that I specifically is I see more women. Very commonly BP apparatus, and when we are telling people to do home monitoring, you know, women, they have to have clothing removed on their hand because they tend to have a blouse or a sleeve which is long, and then they try to, and it's, you know, it has to be specifically told, at least that's what I have seen, because they tend to check blood pressures with clothing on, right, on the arm. So that's one thing that I wanted to add in terms of the, you know, tips and tricks that everybody else said. The other thing that I do in my clinic is I never check blood pressure when the patient walks in. I usually check my blood pressure readings always most probably at the end of maybe, you know, towards the fag end of a consultation. Because I've seen that most people, you know, when they're sitting in the waiting room or in general, the anxiety level is high. I also believe that there is some amount of white coat hypertension, which is there. However, not to the extent where it would become like a 180 systolic, but it always helps for us to build that rapport, you know, get into a conversation, you know, make the patient comfortable, explain them why do you need to check a blood pressure, and then get it done. I have seen that really helps at least to calm the patient down, because then they realize, you know, especially if it's a patient who is new or a patient who, you know, already is somebody who's usually anxious, right? So these are the two sets of patients that I would say I check blood pressure later on than early in my consultation. It helps in kind of getting the right number. I also believe in home monitoring, just like all doctors have said, especially in a new onset case of hypertension, or in a case where medications have to be optimized, right? So we have increased the dose or we have done something with the medication. I usually advise patients to do home monitoring because it helps us to know the intervention that has been done in terms of medication, has that helped? So I believe in that. However, specifically in patients who have anxiety, I tell them not to do it, or either I do not advise them to buy a machine because it just makes it worse. Rather, I do frequent, visits to the clinic, and I usually, for anxious patients, I get the nurse to do the blood pressure check rather than me doing it. And I ask them to come sometime when the doctor is not there. How does that help? In my small practice, what I have realized is that anxious people tend to get more worked up when there are just too many things around or too many people around. But when it's just the nurse and the patient, that kind of really works well, at least in my setting. So those are the few things that I have done, which seems to work when it comes to, managing people with hypertension. In this particular case, though, I would really, want to ask Dr. Anup that this patient came for a routine visit after an year, right? And was there any other hidden agenda that this patient had, apart from the fact that, well, it was COVID and it was difficult to get to a doctor? But was there anything else that prompted her to visit the doctor, after such a long time?
Yes, thank you for asking me that question. It is actually, I take it to my heart, the reason, and it actually is, I feel bad whenever this happens. This patient came to visit a doctor because she was due to get her annual blood test done. So I always tell the patients that, your health is not dictated by your normal blood test, but rather your encounter with a doctor. But in this particular situation, her encounter to me was literally just a byproduct of her visiting the hospital to get their lab test done. So she actually got the lab test done first, and then she came to meet me. That was her only agenda that I could find out.
Mm-hmm. And also because in this patient there were these paroxysmal headaches that you mentioned, and she's taking tuitions and all. I think it's important that we then explore that side of mental health, and I bring in mental health all the time because that's something very close to me, and I feel that everybody needs to explore that because there is something more there, right? One is the hypertension, of course, but what are the other contributing factors there which is making it worse for her in terms of quality of life, right? So that definitely needs some exploration more, in my opinion.
Dr. Gauri, I have got two questions for you, and then we will move on to our other attendees. Number one is, you mentioned about specifics with regard to women. Do you notice anything particularly challenging in terms of women compliance with their medications or their self-monitoring versus men understanding that at home, women probably have more caretaker responsibilities than men? Is it something that is worth looking at or considering?
I mean, though it is so cliched, but the fact remains, at least in the population which I practice in, and I usually see middle class, upper middle class patients. And in that segment also, I feel women taking lesser care of themselves in terms of, I skipped my medication, or, oh, I forgot, or, things like that happen very often. I think it happens with men as well, but at least maybe it's because I see more women in general. Maybe, maybe my set might be, wrong in that sense, but I do see women, compliance to medication is poorer, self-care is poorer in general, but then there are a large segment who definitely take care of themselves better as well. So it really depends. It depends on a lot of other factors for women. Yeah.
And then the second question is, there are at times where after I have told a patient, and I'm sure this happens with pretty much every single doctor who is attending this, there are times where we have told the patient to do self-monitoring and later regret because of the overwhelming attention that the person starts giving, that it starts interfering with their daily life. and then this whole anxiety cycle continues. And then we end up telling them to just stop checking their blood pressure. But now, because they see the reading, they see the numbers, they cannot stop checking their blood pressure. They keep checking, they keep getting anxious. Next thing you know is you are getting 20 readings a day, and that just adds more psychological trauma to the patient. So my question to you as a physician and as a mental health expert is, once we get into this kind of scenario, what is the best way to get out? I don't know if you ever got into this scenario or not. I find myself once a month. How to get out of this scenario?
It is so very common. It's so very common where people would get it. You know, we advise home monitoring for a particular reason, like for, you know, but then when we advise it, again, as I said, you know, that's why it is so important to understand the patient before I advise that patient that you really need to buy a blood pressure monitor, right? It's okay for us to ask the patient to come to the office more often than not, maybe just get a BP check with a nurse and not really pay for a consultation before I know the characteristic of this person. And because I do GP practice in a smaller clinic, and my community is much smaller, you know, in terms of my reach, I am able to understand them over a period of time as to who should I ask to buy a machine versus not. And it takes maybe two or three visits to realize that this person most probably will be able to follow the instructions that I'm giving in terms of how and when and why a blood pressure should be monitored, versus somebody who would, you know, just overdo it and then make it worse for himself. Having said that, I've had patients who would really, you know, just have the cuff around their arm all day long, you know, I mean, to that extent, right? They become so paranoid about it. I have had to had extreme measures wherein I have confiscated blood pressure apparatuses from patients, but that's because I've had a family kind of relationship with people, you know, because the whole family is my patient. So, you know, you can kind of get away with doing things like that in a family practice kind of a thing. But I'm not sure if that can happen in a hospital practice. I'm unsure of that. But I have done that. I have told people, you know what, I'm going to take away your blood pressure monitor and we are going to work around this. You can talk to me anytime. You can walk into my chamber every day and we can discuss, we can have a conversation around your anxiety, but let us not have you, you know, just, you know, asking them to leave that cold turkey. I have done that with 2 patients that I know of. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gauri. I'm going to ask Dr. Murthy for his opinion. Dr. Murthy, I hope you are able to follow the discussion that has been happening for the past 40 minutes. If you could unmute yourself and share your thoughts about today's topic. And I also want to remind all the attendees that if any one of you have got anything to add, just raise your hand and I'll call upon your name. Dr. Murthy, if you could please unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Anup. Actually, I think all of them spoke about daily monitoring of the blood pressure and confirming it whether and then whether they should take treatment, and on treatment whether it is under control or not. If it is self-monitored, it is good. But in this particular patient, I think she had a frequent headache with a blood pressure of 180/110, which you recorded. I think she needs further investigation to decide whether she is having secondary hypertension. That's only my suggestion. But rest of all the things, I agree with others whatever is being told. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Murthy sir. And while rest of my attendees gather their thoughts or questions or comments for this for today's discussion, may I ask Dr. Somaraju for his opinion and his thoughts about today's session while we continue our discussion for the next 12-13 minutes. Dr. Somaraju, if I could please have your thoughts on today's discussion.
Thank you, Anup. I tend to agree with a lot of issues already brought out by a lot of colleagues. And while I say this, I just wanted to tell you, one of the least reliable say parameter, both in inpatient and outpatient in today's practice of medicine, his blood pressure recorded in the case sheets in the IP and OP both. The reasons are the people who measure the blood pressure, they don't have the skills, and they were never trained to do it properly. That applies to mostly the nurses who are asked to do it. Generally, most nurses take the blood pressure. They typically in the round, the doctors, consultants, and the doctors and the people in the IP team, they don't measure the blood pressure themselves. And outpatient, typically in one corner, lot of halabila goes on, and then one of the nurses. So generally, a junior nurse will be there to take the blood pressure. Again, it's unreliable. The consultant or the doctors involved, they don't take the blood pressure themselves. And this is the least reliable aspect of what we practice. Then, having said that, the apparatuses we use in the hospitals and outpatients. And we had done one survey once in one of my previous hospitals I worked. 40% of blood pressure apparatuses that were available were non-functional and difficult to measure blood pressure till blood pressures are entered. So that's what I want to say. That is the status of what we do, what we practice. There are a lot of specialists today. They don't, not even, nobody takes the blood pressure, even if the patient is admitted or even if the patient came to outpatient. That is the status of our blood pressure measurement as on now. Rest of it, I agree with a lot of things that are said.
Thank you so much, sir. And, I will play a little bit of devil's advocate for this thought of yours, and then I will invite your opinion onto this. So I remember Barack Obama once saying that American citizens, they complain that why our products are not of good quality and why our products are all made in China. The fact of the matter is the way economy is going, forget about products that will be made in America anymore because of the economic considerations. You learn to live with products which are made in China, and we just try to see how we can make it better rather than hoping for America to start production again, like what it was doing 50, 70 years ago after the Industrial Revolution. I'm quoting this example because when I came to India, I was amazed to see, at least in few centers, amazed to see nurses and doctors taking the vitals of the patient, because in my entire training in US, even in big university hospitals, we used to have a subordinate of nurse. We used to call them LDAs. They were subordinate to nurses whose job was to take the vitals, and doctors would take the vital only if they had to reconfirm something. So those LDAs, they were offloading the nurses by taking over the vitals assessment. And because their job was only to take vital assessment, they were trained and retrained, and now just by the virtue of them doing the same work again and again with a little bit of supervision, they have now mastered the so-called taking vitals and whatnot. In our scenario where nurses and doctors who are at least put in a position to take blood pressure or take vitals, and then we land into scenarios like you mentioned where the quality control becomes an issue, people don't pay too much attention or time or whatnot. It's almost like we are trying to get America back into production. Isn't it better where we also imbibe upon and not trying to copy the Western world, but imbibe upon a situation where or a scenario where we accept that vitals taken by doctors and nurses will not be accurate, not because they don't know how to do it, or maybe they really don't know how to do it, but also because of the logistic scenario. And rather than that, we do have subordinates placed all over the hospitals and in OP as well, and we train them how to properly take vitals, and their main job is to take vitals. Do you think, sir, something like this is even imaginable, or you think I'm taking too much out of doctors or nurses' hands?
I'm only saying the present status. What is important is two important aspects: is train the nurses and train the doctors themselves, and who do these things. and then that will be reliable. And also check on the quality of the measurements we make and quality of the machines we use. And I don't agree that you should do away with mercury manometers. You should have all the other apparatuses that many of you suggested. They are extremely useful, both in outpatient, inpatient, as well as patients' homes. But mercury manometer is not dispensable. That is the most reliable apparatus. The mercury poisoning is overrated. And I am quoting from, say, the blood pressure measurements as they are done in hospitals, apart from our personal experience. The hypertension monograph of Braunwald's, one of the Braunwald's, say, additional books that are published. This is a worldwide experience of improper measurement of blood pressure, a lack of adequate skills, and then the gold standard is still a mercury manometer. We have to, from time to time, reassess our whatever apparatus we use with the mercury manometers. We need to have a facility and equipment how to test a BP apparatus, whether it is working well or not, the standard BP apparatuses. And there are special machines available, special connections available, etc. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah, I remember in the villages, and I believe still it happens, that in villages, if patients turn up and if doctors don't take blood pressure measurement with a mercury manometer, the patient don't feel satisfied. A doctor has to auscultate the patient and has to take a blood pressure with a mercury manometer. That's kind of the old school quintessential doctor's magic touch to the patient, which still exists in a part of smaller towns. I agree with you that getting rid of mercury manometer may not be that easy of a task. We are a few minutes into, okay, Dr. Shankar, your hand is up. Please go ahead. Yeah.
One more thing we should remember, sir, that is a correct cuff size. This is quite important because the width of the bladder in the cuff should be 40% for the arm circumference, and the length should be 80% of the arm circumference. This should be there to record a proper BP. So if the bladder is too small, undercuffing is there, then overestimation of the BP. If the bladder is too large also, there will be overcuffing and underestimation of the BP. This has to be remembered, because we should have 3 or 4 types of sizes of cuffs should be there. The pediatric, the average adult, the thin built and the large cuff, and even earlier we discussed it, even the thigh cuff also. So this should be remembered, because the miscuffing is also a major fault in recording the blood pressure. And one more thing is a suggestion, or I want to get it clarified from the august audience. The patient, whenever a patient comes with the irregular cardiac rhythm, atrial fibrillation or frequent premature ventricular contractions, then definitely, as Dr. Somaraju has told, I go for a mercury manometer only in this recording, because most of the times my AOBPs or non-AOBPs, that BP apparatuses, they show error. In that situation, I go for a mercury manometer only to record, and I record 3 to 5 times and make it average and give reading in that situation. But sometimes even the electronic BP apparatus also gives a signal that patient has got some irregular heartbeats, just like Just like even in the mercury manometer also, while recording Korotko sounds also, we can find out whether the patient is having missed beats or atrial fibrillation or something. So likewise also, even in the electronic apparatus also, it gives alarm that patient is having some irregular heart. Suppose if it is not shown error. So this is what I have seen in my practice. I go for mercury, or sometimes if it is recorded, I record with the electronic BP apparatus more readings. I take more readings and average it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. I think the 2 points that you mentioned, they are extremely, extremely valuable. And sometimes we don't discuss particularly the second point. The cuff size, obviously, it's very important. Most of the people, they use Omron machine, or the patients, they use Omron machine. The gray cuff in that is the smaller one, and the black cuff is the one which is the larger, or the universal cuff. So while I tell my patients to buy any machine, I tell them to buy the machine which has got the universal cuff that goes up to 42 centimeters. So the routine cuff, the size range is 22 to 32 centimeters. And the larger cuff, the size is 32 to 42 centimeters. And then there is a universal cuff which spans through both the diameters, that is 22 to 42 centimeters. So my OPD has got a 22 to 42 centimeter. And I tell my patients to take that universal cuff so that fits most of them, except in those patients who are really lean and thin, where you think even the smaller cuff is going to be large enough. So that point.
Anup, just wanted to add
Yes, sir.
one thing.
Yes, sir.
While measuring blood pressures is a very common practice, that they measure the blood pressure systolic carefully, and diastolic, the moment 80 is reached, they take away the stethoscope, and they don't measure the blood pressure lower than 80. That's very common occurrence across. This is very important, particularly in elderly people, that the diastolic pressures have to be recorded carefully. If diastolic pressure is less than 70, the treatment of hypertension, the aggressiveness with which you pursue treatment has to be, has to be influenced by the diastolic pressure. Less than 70 blood pressure will be positively dangerous, particularly in elderly people with diminished organ perfusions and diminished circulatory efficiencies, etc. And don't take away the stethoscope the moment you reach 80. Go on recording until you record appropriate diastolic pressure. Less than 70, you must modify your treatment. You should not be aggressive in bringing down the blood pressures when the diastolic pressures are less than 70, particularly in elderly people.
Thank you so much, sir. You mentioned about people taking their stethoscope away. I share my personal experience in one of the small center that I was practicing. It was a cardiology heavy center with about 50 bedded hospitals, so not that small of a center. There, one of the nurses, she told me that she had been taught, and please mind me, this is what she said, that she has been taught to measure the systolic blood pressure and subtract 40 from it and take it as a diastolic pressure and write it in the file. So every single blood pressure that she was documenting and she was teaching others to document was to measure the systolic blood pressure and subtract 40 from it and report it as diastolic. And every single file, be it ICU, be it IP, or be it whatnot, was recorded in such fashion. So what you are saying, sir, is I can at least in my short venture, I can vouch for it. These things are happening, and certainly a lot more education is needed. There are 2 questions or 3 questions which are there. I'm going to throw it up. If anybody has got an answer, please unmute yourself to answer this question. Number 1 is, which is put up in the chat box. Is there any difference between plastic cuff and the fabric cuff or the cloth cuff? I don't perceive any difference. I don't think there is any. If anybody knows the difference between the two, please unmute yourself and share your thought. Any difference between these two cuff in terms of BP measurement? Okay, Praveen, I don't think you will get that question answered. I told you my opinion. I don't think there is any difference. The second question is Mercury BP apparatus with stand or foldable. Foldable is the one that we use, which is the portable, and the stand one is typically what is there in the offices. Again, I don't perceive any difference between the two. I don't know about others. The only thing I can say about the foldable machine is mercury leak. What we have been taught in our MBBS days, if I remember correctly, that all the foldable machines, their mercury tank need to be put into a switch off position every time when you fold the machine. Now we all know that we rarely do that. We all know that the machines are folded even without turning the tank off. That may lead to mercury leak. Whether that will lead to a change in blood pressure measurement, I don't know. And I hope if there is anybody in the audience who knows if there is any difference between the two, maybe they can shed the lights on. I personally do not know any difference between the accuracy of the measurement. And the third question that I have is, many of the times when patients, they are doing home monitoring, because they are not aware of the circadian rhythm fluctuation or the general fluctuation of the blood pressure, they often read changes in their blood pressure as an abnormal fluctuation. So if their blood pressure at some point is 110 and the other point is 130, and I'm talking systolic, they get anxious or they report to their doctor saying that my blood pressure is fluctuating too much and it's going from 110 to 130 or 120 to 140. And that adds an element of concern, and that adds an element of thought that my blood pressure is abnormal or is not controlled. Other than educating patients that these kind of fluctuations are normal finding, is there anything that any of the attendees do in these kind of situations? What is a normal acceptable fluctuation for you? Is 20-30 millimeters enough, or a patient who has got more than that, you consider it as pathological fluctuation? Is there something like a pathological fluctuation? Anybody can share their thoughts about this? I'm sure you have heard a patient who said my blood pressure fluctuates a lot, or my pulse rate fluctuates a lot. How do you deal with it? Anyone? Praneeth, have you ever encountered such scenario where patient comes and tells you that my blood pressure or pulse is fluctuating?
Yes and no. So that is there. That was what one of the cons which we were telling about BP apparatus, that it's some feel it is a toy and they keep playing around and they keep recording. And once you have so much of data now and they keep analytics on that data and they try to see that it is fluctuating more and the BP is high, but they believe it to be standard 120/80, which is an issue. So just like everything, this also needs to be educated, and over a period of time they tend to know. Regarding answering your question on how much will you take it as a consideration, like once in a while it can be high, even 30 to 50 sometimes can be high, but that is where the trend of blood pressure is what makes it a bit easy to interpret, where on one particular day, if you are stressful or you had some issue and your pressure is high, and even if your blood pressure shoots up to 50, it's okay, versus if it is consistently high, then you try to react to it, or else most of the time reassurance and educating them should be okay.
Anup, I just wanted to add here that fluctuation in blood pressure, you must counsel the patients that all biological values fluctuate. If they don't fluctuate, it is not normal. That's number one. Number two, if there is significant fluctuation, it is too high, look for various other possibilities of spacing of drugs, timing of drugs, obstructive sleep apnea, etc.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. I think that whenever the blood pressure shoots, we do have to look for situational increase. And of course, if it is particular time of the day, then we should look for other precipitating causes like sleep apnea and whatnot. The last question which has been put on the chat box, I will answer that question. and then we will close the session. We are already 9 minutes past. So Praveen asks, Mercury BP apparatus stand, how to keep the apparatus at heart level when the machine is at a stand? So how to do that, but where the foldable apparatus, it will be easy to keep it at the heart level versus the one which is on the stand, how to keep it at the heart level. So Praveen, and please correct me, anyone, please correct me if I'm wrong. The heart level requirement is of the cuff, not of the machine. So cuff needs to be wrapped at a place at the position of the arm, which is at the heart level. The machine does not need to be at the heart level. Machine can be anywhere. Machine can be down, up, below, anywhere. It is the cuff that needs to be at the heart level. Am I correct in interpreting this? Is there any second opinion in the group, Shankar sir?
As you said, it is correct. Cough or the bladder in the cuff, it should be at that level of the heart or mid-sternal level. But when we are recording the BP in the mercury apparatus, that level should be at the at the level of the eyes, because to avoid the parallax error. Suppose if we see from down upwards, then it will be different. So to avoid the parallax error, the level should be at the level of the eyes. That is a standard teaching, that is. But regarding the electronic vapor apparatus, it can be kept anywhere. And one more thing is, this is a explanation only to avoid the parallax error, but it need not be at the heart level. BP apparatus need not be at the heart level. It can be, as you said, it can be any level, but the only thing is, when we are looking at the mercury level, then sometimes the oscillations of the mercury we see. Dr. Somaraju sir knows better that the blood pressure sphygmomanometer paradoxes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. Somaraju sir, am I saying it correct? Is it correct that the mercury, the apparatus itself does not need to be at the heart level, only the cuff? Am I reading it correct, or I had a wrong?
The mercury apparatus have to be at the heart level also. It's important.
Mercury apparatus also should be at the heart level.
Yeah.
Okay. So Praveen, in that case, I believe if you have a mercury apparatus which is on the stand, then we will have to do something to get the stand up to the heart level, I believe. So your point is absolutely well taken. I just never thought that the machine also needs to be at the heart level. Okay, we are 12 minutes out. Praneeth, quick closing comments, and then we will be done with today's session.
Yeah, one of the commonest issues of clinical practice, hypertension, and one of the vital parameters, recording of blood pressure, and majority of the treatment based on this one vital parameter, and its importance of measurement has been very well discussed. The importance of self-monitoring has also been highlighted with various tips and tricks highlighted by many of them. And so these things definitely should be brought into clinical practice, and each and every patient with hypertension should be educated of hypertension, and the importance of self-monitoring at home should be highlighted, and they should be educated.
Perfect. Thank you, Praneeth. And I thank all of you for joining me in today's session. All the sessions are recorded, and I keep periodically uploading them on YouTube and podcast. You should be able to take a look. Also, we have a WhatsApp group where we interact offline about the topics that we have discussed already in the huddle. We do this every Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and the same link that you click this time to join should work for the next session as well. I thank you all for sparing your time in today's discussion and this valuable and important topic. If you do have a topic that you think we should discuss in our future huddle sessions, please share that on the huddle WhatsApp group, or you can simply just message me as well, and we will try to include that in our future discussion. Thank you all. Good night. We'll see you next Wednesday.